You're listening to The World at 8 with Lynn Mozart. The World at 8, the number one in nationalist news.
Highlights of the news today, Friday the 1st of March, White Rabbit Day. Terror suspects have British passports torn up. College lecturer confronts teenage bullies and she goes to court. Muslims to sue over prison meat. French unemployment hits record high. Tuberculosis, an old plague, comes back stronger. Nick Griffin, MEP from the belly of the beast. Beware circumcision. South African hair thieves targeting dreadlocks. There's a giraffe in my kudu. Thought for the day, the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but. And finally, 4 police cars and 1 helicopter chase a moped rider. UK news. At least 20 terror suspects have British passports torn up in security crackdown to stop them returning to the UK. In the last 2 years alone, Home Secretary Theresa May has stripped British citizenship from 16 individuals considered to pose a threat to the United Kingdom. Rules in place for a decade allow ministers to act to revoke passports in a bid to target the so-called enemy within. The Home Office today defended the policy from claims it was equivalent to medieval exile, insisting that British citizenship was a privilege, not a right. Officials said that from 2002 to September last year, 20 citizens were stripped of their passports. A report by the Bureau for Investigative Journalism, published in The Independent today, suggested the number is 21, of which only 2 have successfully appealed. World Date says, "This seems too good to be true. Could it be they are finally waking up to the threat?" A college lecturer confronts teenage bullies who punched her 9-year-old son, and she's dragged to court for breaching the peace. Shannon Sibley, 48, was charged with a breach of the peace after her 9-year-old son was punched and had abuse hurled at him by a group of teenagers. Miss Sibley from Carfin, Lancashire, took her car out to find those responsible and confront them after her son had been reduced to tears. The mother of 2 caught up with her son's tormentors, who'd been selling sweets in her housing estate, and after a heated exchange returned home. But she was reported to the police after a witness saw the incident on May the 20th last year. Miss Sibley, a senior lecturer in travel and tourism at Anniesland College in Glasgow, appeared at Hamilton Sheriff Court, where she pleaded guilty to the offence. But Sheriff David Bickett gave her an absolute discharge and told her he understood the reasons for her actions after hearing the case. Today, Tory politician Margaret Mitchell, MSP, blasted prosecutors for allowing the case to reach court. Muslims to sue over prison meat. The government is being sued over the contamination of halal meat in prisons. Prisons Minister Jeremy Wright confirmed yesterday. He told MPs that a small number of claims have been filed and would be robustly defended where appropriate. A number of halal meat pies and pasties supplied to jails were found to contain traces of pork, which Muslims are forbidden from eating. McColgan Quality Foods in County Tyrone was identified as the source of the contamination. A World Date reporter comments, "I care, I really, really care." European news. Portugal. We hold Europe's social cuts record. The Journal de Noticias, 26th of February 2013. During 2011 and 2012, Portugal cut welfare spending by €3.7 billion, almost equal to the €4 billion in additional cuts that the Troika and the government want to see slashed from public spending in 2013 and 2014. Although the country is below the European average for social spending as a proportion of gross domestic product, GDP, the worsening recession seems to have taken spending cut plans by the government and Troika, made up of the European Central Bank, European Union and International Monetary Fund, by surprise. The Troika's 7th review of the Portuguese bailout agreement, which started on February the 25th and will last for about 2 weeks, will be marked by an attempt by Lisbon to soften the terms of the austerity, in order to stem the rise in unemployment and prevent the country plunging into a recessionary spiral. French unemployment hits record high. According to Catholic Online, unemployment in France has hit a 15-year high as the number of people out of work increased by 43,000 in January. There are now 3.16 million without jobs, a 10.7% increase compared to the same month last year. The figures are the worst on record since 1997. Italy, and the winner is Beppe Grillo. In a translation provided by Press Europe Translation La Stampa Turin article on the recent elections in Italy, by bringing together the many Italians disillusioned by old-style politics, former comedian Beppe Grillo has robbed the coalition of the left under Pierluigi Bersani of what was looking like certain victory. Italy will now have to reckon with a new player who is as indispensable as he is unpredictable. The clear outcome of these elections is that Beppe Grillo has won, and that's an understatement. In a mass uprising at the polls against the elite, at least 1 in 4 voters tick the box for the bearded comic, often without having the courtesy to tell the pollsters, who are also considered part of the elite. Not everything can be reduced to a question of gut feelings, even if the grumbling does come from something more than empty stomachs. Feelings are running high here, and they're not merely resentments. There is a desperate hope that the parliamentarians of the Five Star Movement, Grillo's party, are different, that they won't be out to line their pockets, and that most importantly they will listen, which the others had stopped doing long ago. It is as if there had come from 1,000 offices the cries of 1,000 solitudes bound together by computer cables. A virtual emotion that, over time, turned into a protest gathering of individuals who feel misunderstood and shunted into the gloomy shadows of interest groups that have fallen deaf to them, the caste of politicians, journalists, bankers, string pullers. Each member of the Grillo community has a history and a different kind of defeat, has lost a job or never found one, or lost confidence in the future, in the state and in the bodies that stand between them, like the political parties and the unions. They do not hate politics, only those who have held on to their job for far too long without having the competence or the moral authority for it. A vacuum of attention gathered around these despairing souls, and Grillo has filled it. At first with a rude "Fafanculo, up yours," and then with a series of concrete proposals and a good dose of utopia. He sketched landscapes that everyone could colour as they pleased. In its social composition, his movement is a franchise. In Turin he has attracted the alternative types who want to bring down capitalism. In Bergamo the SME owners in trouble with the IRS. In Palermo the desperate and those who are allergic to all forms of public or private oppression. Where there is a malaise, Grillo has provided a format and a face. His own. Tuberculosis, an old plague, comes back stronger. Brussels. Over the course of 2 weeks in 2011, Stefan Radart lost 7 kilos in weight. He coughed constantly. He was chronically tired and had difficulty sleeping. His girlfriend finally persuaded him to go to a doctor. There he discovered he had tuberculosis, an illness he thought belonged to the history books. "I didn't know anything about this disease. I thought it was eradicated," says Stefan. But there was still a grimmer surprise to come. Stefan, a 24-year-old university graduate from Romania, did not just have a normal version of the bacterial lung disease. He had a drug-resistant strain. The first line of antibiotics did not work. Instead, he had to be hospitalised for several months and take a cocktail of drugs which are less effective and which have distressing side effects. Stefan's initial reaction to tuberculosis is common. But the Great White Plague, normally associated with 19th century workhouses, was never fully beaten. And now several Eastern European countries are fighting an epic battle against a tuberculosis strain that has mutated into a more deadly form. That they succeed in this battle is of direct relevance to all Europeans, and in some countries success is not guaranteed. A World Day spokesman commented, "We all know this is one of the benefits of immigration and enrichment, because it's back in the UK now. To compile the agony for our children and grandchildren, we're having to welcome over 70,000 per year from those infected countries in 2014. Belly of the Beast. Now I hand you over to Nick Griffin, MEP, for his talk today on the Eastleigh election in the UK and the Italian elections.
Eastleigh. It's almost inconceivable that any World at 8 listeners don't want to know my view on the result of yesterday's staggering election result in the Hampshire by-election, created for the disgrace and resignation of my Question Time opponent, Chris Huhne. So I'll tell you. When the political history of the first quarter of this century is written, the splintering of the old Conservative Party and its centuries-old dominance of the right in Britain will be one of the main features, and the humiliation of Cameron's pink-blue party at the hands of UKIP in Eastleigh will be one of the markers along the way. UKIP started out with a 3.6% of the vote in the general election of 2010, an election, incidentally, in which, despite all the propaganda of the media and opposition plants, the BNP beat UKIP in more seats than they beat us, and in which our average percentage was higher than theirs. Had Farage stood in person, they would without doubt have won the seat. That he didn't do so was nothing to do with him being frit by the thought of getting a bad vote. Under the circumstances, that was never on the cards. He dodged the contest precisely because he was afraid of winning, because that would have meant him leaving his fractious band of MEPs, several of whom absolutely hate his guts, unsupervised in Brussels. And, while the cat's away, the mice will always play. And, after a battle between Messrs Batten and Nuttall for control in Brussels, the winner would soon have been making plans for Nigel. Retirement plans, that is. UKIP, you see, is not a stable party. It doesn't have an ounce of tradition or ideological ballast. And the financial and other sleaze skeletons in Farage's closet are always threatening to come tumbling out through the doors the minute the party sails into anything other than calm waters, with a helpful BBC breeze to fill the sails. Even so, the result was a triumph for the BBC and its UKIP puppet, and an unmitigated disaster for the Tories, who now face obliteration in 2015, unless Cameron does a 180-degree U-turn and declares war on the pink-blue tendency of which he is a fully paid up and leading member. So he won't. The greatest victims of Eastleigh, however, were the English Democrats. This small, Muslim candidate-standing Civic Nationalist Party cost our Simon Darby the West Midlands seat in the last European election, and nearly cost me mine. Although they were never going to overtake us, their ability to appeal to a section of the nationalist vote out there made them a significant danger to us in the past. Not anymore. Already devastated by the loss of their last elected representative, the Mayor of Doncaster, who quit the sinking ED ship last month, the English Dems leader now faces simultaneous internal challenges from the Butler Cuckoos, who entered the party with a takeover bid in mind from the word go, as well as from the party's moderates, a strange mixed bag of liberals, Muslims and Sinn Féin sympathisers. When the latter group objected to the former's admission 2 years ago, party leader Tilbrook said that the presence of Butler and his clique of crooks, grasses and egomaniacs would give his party, quote, a big boost in electoral credibility, unquote. Tilbrook was still claiming that big electoral strides were within reach just a few weeks back, when he called for the money for 70,000 glossy leaflets for the Eastleigh campaign. The by-election, he claimed, was taking place in circumstances that would provide the EDs with, quote, the perfect storm, unquote. Well, he'll get his perfect storm all right. A storm of disillusionment, recriminations and financial crisis. Because last night in Eastleigh, the English Democrats scraped just one miserable vote for every 1,000 leaflets they send out through the post. Yes, that's right. The party that was supposed to replace the BNP got just 70 votes in an entire parliamentary constituency. They were beaten not only by the National Health Action Party, the Peace Party, an Independent and the people proclaiming Christ's Lordship, but also by the Elvis-loved Pet Party, the monster-raving Loony Party, which got twice as many votes as the EDs, and the Beer, Baccy and Crumpet Party, I do like the sound of that one, which got more votes than its monster-raving rival and the EDs combined. The consequences of Tilbrook's disastrous error in letting into his party the very people who several years ago came close to wrecking ours are now clear for all to see. Even standing in Eastleigh, as recommended by Mr. Butler, the election guru, was a ridiculous thing to do, because it was always going to be the kind of close-run contest in which the non-front runners would get squeezed. That's why not only the BNP, but also Respect and the Greens, who have an MP not so far along the south coast in Brighton, stayed out of it, keeping our powder dry for seats which suit us, as, for example, was the case for us in Rotherham at the end of last year, when, like UKIP last night, we beat the Tories. But such decisions take experience, common sense and discipline. qualities which none of the would-be rivals for our position as the sole standard-bearer of nationalism possesses. UKIP don't count because they're a completely internationalist, pro-bankster, pro-Zionist, pro-globalist split from the Conservative Party. Hence the BBC's success in promoting that split is a matter for the other internationalist parties in Westminster and not for us. The final point to note from Eastleigh is the fact that, despite the close contest and the added excitement over the presence of an electorally credible safety valve in UKIP, there was a turnout of below 53%. When you add in the people not registered to vote, this means that fewer than half of all potential voters in that overwhelmingly middle-class constituency bothered to vote. That, primarily, is where our great potential lies, with a huge block of people who have noted that all politicians are the same and have given up voting in disgust. They are the people who we must reach, which is why our continuing experiments with community aid projects are so important, because it's not enough to tell them we're different, we have to show them we're different. We have to prove we're different. Despite brutalising the Tories, spelling the death knell for the debt-ridden English Democrats, and providing us with further inspiration for our new concept of applied idealism, the Eastleigh result was only a single by-election in one English constituency. If you want a result that could be a truly significant moment in world history, and which could in due course have an impact on Britain's already desperately sick economy, then the Italian one last weekend was the real deal. The fact that a cliffhanger failed to produce any credible or stable government in Italy isn't the significant point. After all, Italians have a long tradition of getting through more governments than... No, I shouldn't say what I thought about saying. It could damage European relations. But I'm sure you can think of a suitable simile for yourself. It's not so much that whatever new ruling coalition that can be cobbled together is unlikely to see out the year. That's pretty normal for Italy. What's new is the huge surge in votes and the big majority for parties which reject not just the EU's austerity occupation government, but the very idea of allowing Italy's continued crucifixion on the euro. The majority of those Italians who did vote took the opportunity to scream, "Enough, no more, stuff you euro crisis, and give us back our lira." On top of that, some 40% didn't even bother to go to the polls, but just grumbled angrily about all politicians being the same. The Italians have not yet suffered anything like the pain already endured by the Greeks, and the Eurocrats' problem, reaction, solution, crisis demands that they must feel a lot more pain, as must the peoples of every other country in the arc of depression that stretches from Bulgaria to Portugal. The result of this election tells us that the austerity and EU occupation government drive cannot possibly be imposed and seen through in Italy, or indeed in any European state, through the democratic process. The unstoppable force of the federal EU juggernaut is going to crash into the immovable object of popular refusal to accept economic and social agony at the behest of an out-of-touch and unelected ruling class. The whole thing is now a slow-motion train crash. In the early stages, the damage and the crash will mainly be done to the vulnerable but ultimately immovable masses. In the long run, it will be the hitherto unstoppable EU gravy train that is smashed to pieces. The Europhiles' greatest vulnerability is that they are psychologically incapable of accepting that they cannot force their way through the looming mountain of popular resistance ahead. The other day, I tweeted a photo of a front page that summed it all up. Among the daily pile of Euro junk mail I receive in my office was a copy of the latest publication from the European Economic and Social Committee. Its headline says it all: "No setback will ever stop European integration." I couldn't help laughing at the breathtaking mix of arrogance and ignorance. I'm looking forward to the next issue, by which time the Italian crisis will have added a further vicious new twist to the spiral of EU disintegration. What will the headlines say then? What odds on it will all be over by Christmas?
Thank you, Nick. That set the record straight on the much publicised Eastleigh elections. Thank you. World news. Beware circumcision. The Jakarta police are conducting psychological tests on a woman who allegedly drowned her son due to the size of his genitals, a spokesman said on Wednesday. Retno Purwati, 38, was arrested on Tuesday after she went to the East Jakarta police and admitted to killing her son at her house in Kakun, East Jakarta. It seems like she committed the murder consciously. She filled up a bathtub with water, tied the kid up and drowned him. Afterwards she dressed him. It was all done very neatly, but we still recommend for her to undergo a psychological examination. Senior Commando Rick Wanto told the Jakarta Globe on Wednesday. After Retno forced her son's head under water, she picked up her oldest daughter from school and asked her to go home to look after her brother, while Retno went to the police station to report herself. She explained to police what she had done and asked them to check if her son was still alive. However, when the police arrived at the scene, the boy had already died. Ritwanto said the mother told the police that she killed her son because after he was circumcised, his penis shrank. Waiter, there's a giraffe in my kudu. Johannesburg. It's been reported to Reuters that only 3 days after being told their hamburgers may in fact be donkey or water buffalo, South African meat lovers have been dealt another blow. Biltong, the fabled dried meat snack, may not be as wild as many packets suggest. Acting on a hunch and some 4 years before Europe's horse meat scandal broke, researchers at the University of the Western Cape tested 146 biltong samples from major retailers and small butchers from across South Africa. All packets labelled beef were found to be correct, but 90% of biltong sticks, supposedly made of kudu, a large curly-horned antelope, were actually horse, pork, beef, giraffe or even kangaroo. It started with curiosity and suspicion because one piece of dried meat looks much like another, researcher Maria Eugenia D'Amato from the university's DNA forensics lab told Reuters. We initially tested a few samples and the results were shocking, so we decided to formalise the research. Furthermore, zebra biltong was found to contain meat from the mountain zebra, a species threatened with extinction. Biltong, air-dried strips of meat made from wild game or animals reared on the country's 10,000 plus wildlife farms, is staple fare for South Africans, who regard it as a healthy, low-fat snack. Research released this week found that donkey, water buffalo and other unconventional ingredients had been found in almost 2/3 of hamburgers and sausages tested in Africa's largest economy. South African hair thieves targeting dreadlocks. If you live in Johannesburg and sport dreads, watch out. They're thieves on the loose looking for your hair. Apparently there's a rising demand for natural dreadlocks as extensions. Jack Maseko of Zimbabwe was recently mugged by 3 men in South Africa. They wanted nothing but his mobile phone and the dreadlocks he'd spent 3 years patiently cultivating. They had a knife and cut off my hair with scissors. I still feel pain when I think about that night, the 28-year-old Zimbabwean told the BBC News team. I used to see people selling dreadlocks on the streets and didn't know where it came from, he adds, still battling to believe what happened to him as he was walking home late at night in Johannesburg. Jack is not the first. Just a few weeks ago, Jasper Munsinawa was apparently partying at a nightclub in Johannesburg when he noticed that his friend was missing. When he went to look for him, he found his friend passed out and missing all his dreadlocks, which had been shorn off. His friend was Mutsa Mandanko, who was visiting from Zimbabwe earlier this month, but apparently he's only one of a growing number of people who have had their dreads stolen in the last few months. Hairstylists say that the thefts are probably connected to a rising demand for natural dreadlocks for use as extensions, because shoulder-length dreadlocks are sold for between 200 Rand and 700 Rand, equivalent to $22 and $77, and longer ones can cost as much as 2,500 Rands, equivalent to $277. There's a growing market in the item. Muslim cleric man Haron Monis loses bid to have charges over offensive letters squashed. A self-styled Muslim cleric accused of sending offensive letters to families of slain Australian soldiers has lost a High Court bid to have the charges against him quashed. Man Haron Monis, also known as Sheikh Haron, was charged in 2011 with 12 counts of using a postal service in a way that a reasonable person would consider menacing, harassing or offensive. He allegedly sent letters and in one case a recorded message to the relatives of several diggers killed in action in Afghanistan and the mother of an Austrade official killed in the bombing of a hotel in Indonesia. His co-accused, Amira Drudis, faces 8 counts of aiding and abetting Mr Monis. Bill Gates continues God's work. Third world vaccine workers are shot dead. Christina England of VacTruth.com writes, In January 2013, Bill Gates told the world in an interview that he had no need for money and that he believed the global vaccination programme was God's work. "It's not going to stop us succeeding," says Gates. "It does force us to sit down with the Pakistan government to renew their commitments, see what they're doing in security and make changes to protect the women who are doing God's work and getting out to these children and delivering the vaccine." His words came after several vaccine workers administering the polio vaccination in Pakistan were shot dead in January. It appears that although Gates wants to carry on with what he calls God's work, people living in the third world are beginning to make their feelings abundantly clear. It appears that they don't want his vaccines or his charity, as more shootings were reported in Nigeria. They're right to be suspicious, because it would not be the first time that vaccines were given with the intention of sterilising women in the third world. In 1995, many third world countries were given a tetanus vaccine containing a birth control drug by the World Health Organization. A World at 8 writer says, "Gates is a stupid liberal and yet apparently has a guilty I am rich complex. He should be looking after the American people, not this bunch of savages." Sudan. Doctors perform amputations for courts. End corporal punishment reform laws. Credible sources in Sudan have reported to Human Rights Watch that government doctors amputated a man's right hand and left foot by court order in Khartoum on February 14, 2013, in violation of the absolute prohibition on torture and cruel, inhuman or degrading punishments, 4 human rights groups said today. The African Centre for Justice and Peace Studies, Human Rights Watch, Redress and Physician for Human Rights called on Sudanese leaders and international actors to condemn the practice immediately and to urge swift reform of Sudanese laws in conformity with Sudan's international human rights commitment. Thought for the day: the whole truth and nothing but the truth. Now, does anyone really want the truth? Probably not. The whole truth on many subjects taken personally would hurt and offend practically everybody we know, including our families and this presenter. Truth may set you free, but it can open a can of worms, and you can bet that one man's truth will become another man's lies. However, there are some truths that need saying, because in certain circumstances it could be viewed as a constructive truth. That is, unless you hear the truth, how can you change yourself or alter the outcome? So here I go with a few Friday truths that might upset a few people, but I've never been known for holding back. I'm sure the comments on World at 8 will be informative. By the way, keep them coming. They are constructive critiques and most welcome. The truth about Eastleigh. Now, I live near Eastleigh in Hants. I have looked after the SE region for many years as secretary, so know it and the surrounding areas very well. Why didn't we stand a parliamentary candidate there? Simples, in the word of my favourite meerkat, Sergei. Even to those who are armchair wannabe politicians, it must be apparent that our activists are getting financially worse off, not better off, and parliamentary candidates cost money, and we would not be true to our members if we wantonly lost deposits from party funds. There wasn't a candidate who could, as in some other parties, fund themselves. In the words of Sun Tzu in his Art of War, never fight a battle you cannot win. Or for some people who have been creating a fuss over a BNP persona not standing, don't ask the question if you don't like the answer. From the grassroots and local perspective, it was a complete no-go from the outset. Our membership in Eastleigh is low. Our support in that area is low. Our activists around Eastleigh have been dormant for years. They don't vote or leaflet, and in no way could they mount an election platform in the few weeks allowed. We have marvellous organisers in that area, and can they get anyone to shift their arses? No. And to cap it all, it is a Liberal Democrat territory all over this area of Hampshire, massive. UKIP have made an inroad only thanks to the retard Liberal lovies that abound around here, and that's only because of their Euro stance. So that is why the British National Party in the South East didn't push to stand a nationalist candidate in a solid yellow area. We would have been lucky to get 200 votes. It really is quite simple in its truth. To sum it up, can you imagine our enemies and even our own prattling on about the result? Another truth is that TB is on the rise again in Western Europe and the UK. It stems mainly from Eastern Europe thanks to the immigration of peoples from India, Africa and the Far East. This new strain is drug resistant, and in the UK we not only boast of the enrichment of thousands of these people who could and are carrying this strain, but will be in the process of allowing thousands more in from Romania and Bulgaria per year from 2014. Just think of the truth of having your child sitting next to an infected child for months. TB is not apparent at the beginning of the disease. Treble and quadruple this and you have an imported epidemic on your hands, one which the government and the authorities will deny until the last child is dead, and that is the truth. Our own people who revile this party should be thinking of that truth, not what they should or shouldn't be doing this weekend. Another truism came up with yet another Tonight programme last night on part-time Britain. What really stuck in my craw was the absolute and total mindless banality and almost brain-dead upbeatness of it all. It was an obvious whitewash and leftist-backed truth programme, thus not truthful at all. Or rather, the truth was wrapped in cheery and positive lies. There are apparently 30 million people in work. Yeah? What ethnicity and who for? There are millions of older generation men and women not working, but who are not signed on because they're deemed too old and receive pensions. Thus, they are not registered on any out-of-work listings, even though many years ago they would still be working for at least 5 more years. The cheery, upbeat presenter, who was late 20s if a day, had done many jobs from babysitting to coffee girl, and was now of course the poster girl for ITV with an ace correspondence job. Well, whoopee for her. I bet the young woman with a family and husband who had to do 3 jobs a day whilst her husband still worked full-time but with reduced money as it was in the building trade would have liked to have swapped places with her. I have nothing but respect for this lady from Essex, Gillian, who worked like a Trojan to keep what appeared to be a very nice family home going. Although I was alone when working for my family, at least the job was full-time, but then those were the days, weren't they? And that is the truth. Life was better for some and more ordered for most. 60 years ago most people had full-time jobs, and they were for life, and then they retired, having bought their houses and brought up their families, in what is regarded nowadays by the media as the bad times, when people were not allowed to be themselves. But at least they were not up their own arseholes, to coin a phrase which is trendy nowadays. People knew their place, and that is a truth. You worked for what you got, you didn't work, you didn't get. Things were tougher, but then we were tougher than now, with all our maunderings and hysterics over things which really don't matter. This programme was a gem of dumbing down the fear of redundancy and recession. Apparently the UK is now the haven of part-time workers. ITV put it down to the global recession that many manufacturing firms have had to cut down to 2 days a week and make their staff share jobs in order to survive and not lay off people. Now, odd though it may seem, part-time work came into its own in the 1980s, in the first recession in the white-collar companies, and desk sharing came in as well. There's nothing new in it at all. It's not the holy grail, as in truth our manufacturing demise is down to the fact that the powers that be have sent all our main manufacturing abroad to India and China, who all work full-time, when it should be us working full-time and not accommodating foreigners yet again. Truth. Bring back manufacturing to our own country and we might start working properly again. Another truth is that 1/3 of our working population do casual labour jobs. The truth of this is that it shows how bad the working situation is, if that is all people can get. But when you see a young uni graduate working part-time in a hairdresser's and go, ah, wise up, that young lady has a degree in, wait for it, conservation and ecology. Now maybe I'm mad, but what are the unis doing in turning out degrees in what used to be nothing jobs or the realm of the local polytechnic? Hairdressing, false nails, tanning, saving the planet, dog walking or worse still diversity training are all none degrees in my book. Truth, you will never get a job in today's world doing any of that at corporate level. It's yet another nail in the coffin of the young white members of our society, forcing them to downgrade to jobs that even the immigrants don't want to do. In fact, what was not covered in this programme was the fact that most children of immigrants, especially Asian and Chinese, go to university to train as professionals. Doctors, lawyers and the like. Not for them the forced nail brigade, they bus them in from China for that. Now that is the truth. 1 in 5 graduates work part-time, 1 in 10 are on the dole. I'm sure the truth of this only applies to white, black and mixed race youngsters. This programme ended on the high note of the fact everyone was delirious at working so hard, for so many, for so little, and long may it last. This programme showed that we as a society have lost the plot and are being manipulated into what the establishment want from us, the indigenous population. That of a reduced society, with reduced birth rates due to lack of housing, reduced marriage due to leftist propaganda, reduced job status due to too much immigration and greedy manufacturers moving east. Put this with reduced status, self-worth and an acceptance of positive lies and you have the start of an ethnic cleansing all by itself. The longer we as people do not accept or even know the truth, the nearer that time comes. Truth hurts, doesn't it? It's painful to know that the people we in the British National Party seek to help are fighting against us and many of the unsaid truths by leaving us, not supporting us, not becoming activists if members, by setting up irrelevant splinter groups of quasi-nationalists, not attending or holding meetings, blaming our own chief officers for things beyond their control and generally not doing a bloody thing, either for themselves, nationalism or their country. But they can always whinge and complain over the lack of this and the lack of that. The truth is, to make nationalism work, you need an un-British mindset, that of a reality check. If you want to change something, you need truth. If you want to make a difference, you need truth. If you want to succeed in doing both of these things, you need a united truth. And that is accepting that not all political parties are perfect, that we all have feet of clay, and that in nationalism, more than any other ethos, we need unity and not separateness and the individual. The individual is not important in nationalism. The state, the party and the people are. We have so many good people in this country, but we have so many who think on the level of I and me and what can I get out of it. The truth is that unless we all band together against the purveyors of positive lies, non-essential thinking and society-changing rules, we will not survive. Well, at least not in the way most of us want to survive. There is a war raging, and that is the truth. Not all wars are fought with bombs and soldiers. The most life-changing events are the ones brought about silently and without the light of truth. And finally, 4 police cars and a helicopter to chase a man on a 15-mile-per-hour moped. The not-so-nail-biting pursuit where rider even slowed down for speed humps. But police pursuing James Phillips in a decidedly low-speed chase were determined not to be beaten and sent up the force helicopter. That wasn't all. 4 patrol cars were also drafted in as the moped pootled along at 15 miles per hour. And after a not so nail-biting chase through the streets of Bristol, the officers finally got their man. During the daylight pursuit, Phillips, 22, a disqualified driver, was seen slowing down for speed bumps, but also mounted pavements and swerved dangerously in front of cars. Crew in the helicopter gave a running commentary on his progress and at one point emphasised the low speed he was riding at, telling colleagues on the ground speed is 15 miles an hour. This presenter cannot stop laughing but would say with a top speed of around 30 miles per hour, a second-hand 50cc moped would not be the getaway vehicle of choice for most criminals. Of course the police might have been justified in this overkill had he looked like a terrorist and was carrying a huge parcel marked bomb. You've been listening to The World at 8. I am Lynn Mozart and I and the team at World at 8 and Radio Britain wish you all a very happy and a very safe weekend.